Welcome. I thank you for joining us today. I am your host, Dr. Derek A. Reeves, and this is our daily Bible study. Today we're going to continue on with our definitive study on understanding fear, and today's lesson, Terms for Fear, Part 14. Let's dive right into our next term. We are presently in the Greek terms, and so we want to explore these Koine Greek meanings. Koine is the biblical Greek in which the New Testament was penned. So the next term is ekphobos, or ekphobos, frightened out of one's wits, sore afraid, or exceedingly fear. It's interesting because when we look at the term to be frightened out of one's wits, the wits or the witticism is the capacity to utilize what we would call the intelligence factor or the cognition, the part that gives us the capability of flowing in logic. So to be scared out of one's wits is basically what even neuroscientists and a lot of psychologists have found today. And I'm not saying that the word must come up to science, but science comes up to the terminology because these terms were set in stone within the text thousands of years ago, and science has finally caught up to the scripture. We can understand now the viability of the word. And so to be scared out of one's wits is literally to be ambushed into moving from the specific aspect of the mind and the specific aspect of the brain, wherein we stop using the intellectual capacity. We stop using the rationale or the cognition, and so learning shuts down. In 9 times out of 10, when we are acting out of ekphobos, the terminologies of understanding are stifled because fear can hijack or cause the brain to be hijacked by emotions. We've talked about this before, but in this type of fear, what happens, your own mind will activate not just the reticular activating system, but it will activate the amygdala. The amygdala then causes the brain, in association with fear, to start releasing hormones that will literally cause certain factors of the brain to be put on hold while those fear factors come forward. And it is a means or mechanism for survival. And so ekphobos causes one to stop utilizing intellect and move into the emotional status, which again will implement the 4 F's. The 4 F's: fight, flight, freeze, or faint. And so ekphobos, it causes us to be sore afraid, and it limits our capacity to begin to even tap into common sense or the intellect to discover what's going on. It is a form of fear that could be considered to be frightened to the point where you are horrified. When one is horrified, they are beyond the capacity to think rationally. They begin to move out on their emotions. Remember the term emotion, ex movere, some say ex movere, depending on what type of Latin or where you've studied your Latin from. But ex movere simply means ex, out, movere, move. So emotions move you out of one place mentally into another station where the 4 F's are implemented. And it is a survival mode that God placed within us. Sometimes when people are horrified, they realize the only way they're going to get out of this, they have to fight. Then sometimes, because it's so overwhelmingly powerful, the sense of fear, they flee. Then sometimes the fear overrides the mechanisms of the mind to utilize the neurological system to motivate or activate the body, so they freeze. And then sometimes the cognition or the brain, the overwhelming fear is so much that the influx of impulses and information causes the brain to shut down, and individuals simply faint. We're going to try to get to another term today, and I'm hoping, because we have quite a few terms, that if we are going to make this study relevant but also concluded in a timely manner, we have to make sure we get through all of these terms to make our study relevant and to do what it is we need to do. And so the next term, again, from the Koine Greek, again, the New Testament was written in the Koine Greek, and there are certain parts that have Aramaic language in it. And so let's go. The next term is Eulabia. And so the term Eulabia simply means properly caution, that is, religious reverence, piety, by implication, dread, or concretely that which is to be feared. As we go a little further to unpack it, the word Eulabia can mean caution, circumspection, or discretion. Discretion that leads you to avoid specific things. It is a type of reasoning where you shun specific things. And so this type of fear brings us into a commonality of using both the emotion and the intellect. The intellect drives the understanding that this thing should be avoided. This action should be shunned. It operates under a sensory mechanism, again, of even the spiritual aspects of understanding what common sense is due to biblical standards or holiness. And so it is the disposition of one who is cautious, who is walking in circumspection, in reverence to God. It is a fear that then causes you to stay away from certain aspects, to stay away from certain activities, even certain people, because of your reverence or respect to God. When we go a little further, it is the internal attitude of reverence toward a person, a thing, or an event. It includes as an attitude of that inner being, but also externalizes that attitude in worship or the demonstrations of worship. And so it's a very interesting term because this type of fear engages, first of all, standards, systems of values. It engages spiritual qualities and connections with God. It engages reverential fear. And because of this fear, it is interpreted in the mind, not to shut down the mind, but it invokes a rationality, and a rationality that is linked with servitude and worship of God. And because we realize these things will take us out of relationship with God, we shun them, we avoid them, and we fear them out of respect. And so respect doesn't only cause us to pull back from specific things, but it also causes us to cling to God a little forward and a little further and a little more frequently and with more apprehension of letting go. And so fear can be designed to keep us and to preserve us naturally, but it can also cause us to be preserved spiritually, locked within a contingency that I choose not to affiliate. I choose not to link. I choose not to accept something out of fear or reverence of losing my relationship or losing my place with God. I thank you again for joining us. We are out of time, but we'll be back. I am your host, Dr. Derek A. Reeves, and this is our daily Bible study. Again, we thank you. Always remember, Jesus is Lord, and He's coming back again. God bless.